Las Vegas is facing a crisis no one thought was possible. A city built on spectacle is now collapsing under one of the biggest spectacles ever imported. Formula One promised to bring glory, wealth, and international prestige to the Strip. Instead, it brought something else. Sealed streets, stranded businesses, displaced locals, fleeing tourists, exploding prices, and a city that once lived for everyone now living only for the ultra-rich. In the shadows of billion-dollar grandstands, Vegas isn't celebrating. It's suffocating, because F1 didn't just shut down roads. It shut down the identity of Las Vegas. And the frightening question now is simple. What happens when the city built to entertain the world can no longer entertain its own people? For decades, Las Vegas was the most democratic luxury in America, a place where millionaires and minimum wage workers stood side by side at the same blackjack table, where anyone could feel rich for a night, even if their real life wasn't. Cheap rooms, endless buffets, walk-anywhere casinos, neon lights. Vegas was built on the promise of accessibility. But that promise is dying, and Formula One didn't start the fire. It simply poured gasoline on a city already burning. The Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix was sold as a miracle, a once-in-a-lifetime event that would elevate the Strip forever. Politicians called it historic. Executives called it a global branding opportunity. But the reality was much darker. To build the track, entire sections of Las Vegas Boulevard were shut down for weeks. Sidewalks were wrapped in tall metal fencing. Hotels lost foot traffic. Workers couldn't reach their shifts. Deliveries were blocked. Taxis doubled in price. Ride-share trips tripled. Restaurants watched their revenue collapse. A city that thrives on movement suddenly stopped moving. And the most surreal moment came when Bellagio fountains, the symbol of Vegas magic, were blocked behind a massive temporary F1 building. Tourists came to see the fountains. Instead, they saw a gray wall. One visitor said, "I paid thousands to be here, and I can't even see the one thing I came for." This wasn't a celebration. It was a takeover. And small businesses began sounding the alarm, saying they lost more money during F1 than during the entire pandemic shutdown. Hotels raised their prices to insane levels. $500 rooms suddenly cost $2,000. Budget hotels charged luxury rates. Buffets vanished. Casinos began charging for parking. Coffee prices doubled. Everything surged into the absurd. But the strangest part was that even as prices climbed higher than ever, the Strip was emptier. Tourism was falling. Convention attendance was shrinking. Locals were leaving. Workers were quitting. Vegas wasn't thriving. It was shrinking because the city forgot the core truth its entire economy depends on. People don't come to Vegas for luxury. They come for value. When luxury becomes overpriced, it's no longer luxury. It's a barrier. And Formula One didn't help reverse that trend. It accelerated it. The people who come for F1 arrive in private jets, stay for just a few days, spend money in elite clubs, and then disappear. They don't fill buffets. They don't fill shows. They don't book midweek stays. They don't explore the local scene. They are not the backbone of the economy. They are the spotlight, bright, flashy, and short-lived. Vegas bet everything on one weekend and lost the other 362 days. For the first time, Vegas is splitting into two separate worlds. The Vegas of the ultra-rich and the Vegas abandoned by everyone else. The Strip is transforming into a high-end corporate fortress. Exclusive skyboxes, gated viewing areas, VIP lanes, premium clubs, restricted sidewalks, $3,000 packages for a weekend. Meanwhile, locals, the people who keep the city alive, are being priced out of the place they built. Workers are commuting farther. Evictions are rising. Rents are exploding. Seniors are sleeping in RVs. Families are moving out of state. This isn't entertainment anymore. This is survival. And with every passing year, Vegas feels less like a city and more like a showroom for the wealthy. The transformation of Las Vegas didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly, disguised as progress. At first, it looked like innovation, new towers, new conventions, new attractions. But beneath the shine, the city was quietly drifting away from its roots. The average visitor, the families, the middle-class workers, the weekend gamblers, began to feel like they no longer belonged here. The free parking disappeared. Resort fees multiplied. Buffet lines shortened not because they were efficient, but because they were disappearing. And then came Formula One, a global symbol of elite entertainment, landing in the middle of a city that once prided itself on being the exact opposite of elite. What followed wasn't excitement. It was a shockwave. As the first fences went up, locals began to understand that this wasn't just an event. It was a transformation. Hours-long gridlock. Sidewalks sealed off. Footpaths redirected behind barricades. One resident described it as living in a construction zone for billionaires. The irony was brutal. The very workers who kept the city running could barely reach their jobs. A bartender working on the strip told reporters he suddenly had to leave home 3 hours earlier because one wrong turn meant another 40 minutes trapped between concrete blocks and detours. Delivery trucks couldn't access loading docks for days. Employees quit not because the job was hard, but because the city itself became impossible to navigate. And while all of this was happening, corporate leadership insisted everything was under control. But the streets told a different story. Shops that used to rely on walk-in customers found themselves empty as the crowds were funneled into narrow pathways controlled by security. Businesses outside the F1 perimeter watched their revenue fall by 20, 30, even 40%. Some shut down temporarily, others permanently. For a city built on tourism flow, blocking movement was like cutting off oxygen. Tourists arriving that week reported the same shock. People expecting the freedom of the Strip instead found themselves walking through fenced tunnels like airport passengers being herded into terminals. Many said they would never return for F1 again, not because the race was bad, but because the city felt hijacked. Visitors come to Vegas to feel free. During F1, they felt controlled. But perhaps the most dangerous part of all of this is invisible. While F1 brought the wealthy for a few days, it pushed out the people Vegas depends on the most. The millions of ordinary visitors who fill the Strip every other week of the year. The data reveals a troubling pattern. Mid-range tourism has dropped sharply. Air travel numbers are down. Visitor spending is falling. Yet the only part of the city still growing is high-end luxury, a niche market that cannot sustain a city of 2.3 million people. Behind closed doors, casino executives know this. They see the reports. They see the empty midweek rooms. They see declining convention bookings. But instead of lowering prices or restoring value, many double down on a high-end strategy. They believe the future of Vegas is luxury, even if luxury is a demographic with almost no loyalty. High rollers don't return out of love. They return out of convenience. And the moment a more exclusive destination appears, they disappear. Meanwhile, the workers who keep Vegas alive face a cost of living crisis the city has never seen. Rent increases outpace wage growth at a staggering rate. A one-bedroom apartment in central Vegas now costs as much as the entire paycheck of a hotel housekeeper. Seniors who spent decades in hospitality are being priced out of neighborhoods they helped build. Some sleep in their cars. Others move to distant suburbs, driving an hour each way, burning through fuel they can barely afford. Yet the city keeps insisting everything is fine. High-value tourism, they call it. Premium positioning. Strategic global partnerships. Beauty words used to hide the truth. Las Vegas is losing the people who made it magical. And here's the heart of the problem. When you replace a city's foundation with something more fragile, the entire structure begins to crack. Vegas didn't rise because of the wealthy. It rose because of everyone else. The families, the workers, the young visitors, the retirees, the convention crowds, the low rollers who spent a little and laughed a lot. They're the ones who filled the Strip, not for a weekend, but for a lifetime. But today, as towers glow brighter and sidewalks grow tighter, the city feels colder, less human, more corporate. You can sense it in the silence between casino floors. You can feel it in the empty tables at restaurants that used to be full every night. You can see it in the faces of workers who used to smile because the energy of the city lifted them up, but now walk through their shifts exhausted, knowing the next round of layoffs could be coming any day. The transformation is happening quietly, but the consequences won't be quiet at all. As the cost of living rises and the Strip grows more exclusive, a strange and heartbreaking phenomenon begins to unfold across Las Vegas. The parking lots of big box stores, empty desert pull-offs, and forgotten industrial corners are quietly turning into makeshift neighborhoods. Look closer at night and you'll see it. Rows of old RVs with fog windows, minivans with curtains drawn, sedans packed with belongings. These are not travelers. These are not tourists. These are longtime workers who no longer are enough to sleep in the city they keep alive. Many of them never imagined they would end up here. A housekeeper with 28 years of experience. A retired casino technician. A line cook who once had a 2-bedroom apartment near the Strip. Now they live in vehicles. Not because they want to, but because it's the last thing they can still afford. Their lives run on gallons of fuel, the search for a safe parking spot, and a recurring fear of the midnight knock. A security guard, a police officer, or another RV resident desperate for help. Every morning. As the sun rises over the neon skyline, these people quietly blend back into the workforce. They shower at gyms, in public restrooms, or at gas stations. They iron uniforms in their cars. They walk into hotels looking polished, professional, and ready to serve guests. Guests who will never guess that their waiter slept in a parking lot only a few hours earlier. This hidden crisis is amplified by the choices the city keeps making. Mega events like Formula One, meant to showcase Vegas as a global luxury capital, draw money, but not the kind of money that sustains a community. The weekend spikes in revenue do nothing to stabilize the other 360 days. When workers struggle to find shifts, businesses fight to break even, and ordinary families face impossible decisions. A single mother interviewed by a local paper explained it simply: "I can pay rent, or I can pay for food. The Strip looks richer every year, but I'm getting poorer." Her story echoes across the valley. Teachers moving out of state, casino staff taking second jobs, senior citizens rationing medication. It's the kind of collapse you don't see on postcards or Instagram reels. The collapse behind the curtain. Even those who still afford housing face another silent enemy: distance. Many Vegas workers now drive more than 40 miles each way because the neighborhoods near the Strip have become financially unreachable. Henderson, once considered affordable, is out of reach for many. North Las Vegas is filling rapidly and pushing families farther out into the desert. As rent climbs, patience shrinks, and the question becomes unavoidable: how long can a city function when the people who run it cannot live anywhere near it? Meanwhile, the Strip itself is experiencing its own internal decline. Revenue reports show that while peak weekend profits soar, midweek occupancy is dropping. Restaurants that once had lines out the door now close early. Casino floors stay half empty outside of event weekends. The illusion of constant prosperity remains, but beneath it is a dangerous truth. Vegas is losing its middle, and losing the middle means losing everything. Casinos used to operate on a simple formula: millions of small spenders equals a thriving city. But the new formula, fewer guests, higher prices, premium-only services, creates instability. When you charge more for everything, you limit who can participate. And when you limit participation, you weaken the foundation of your economy. Vegas was built on movement, on energy, on crowds. A constant flow of people. But that flow is slowing. Convention traffic is shrinking. Regional tourism is down. California visitors, once the lifeblood of the city, are choosing cheaper alternatives like Phoenix, San Diego, or local casinos. They don't see the point in spending thousands on a weekend when Vegas feels less welcoming and more expensive than ever. At the same time, major hospitality companies begin optimizing labor structures, a cold phrase that hides the truth: layoffs. Thousands of jobs quietly evaporate as companies replace human workers with automation systems. Self-check-in kiosks, AI-driven customer service, automated bartending, digitized concierge systems, performance tracking algorithms that reduce the need for human expertise. Technology may be efficient, but it cannot replicate the warmth that made Vegas famous. For visitors, the shift is subtle at first. A missing smile here, a slower response there, a colder atmosphere overall. For workers, it's devastating. They lose not just income, but identity, the pride of being part of a city unlike any other. A dealer who devoted 15 years to a major casino described the new environment bluntly: "I don't feel like a person anymore. I feel like a statistic the company is trying to shrink." This emotional fracture is dangerous. A city that was once built on human connection is becoming a machine, polished, profitable, and entirely empty inside. The more Vegas pushes toward automation and exclusivity, the more it drifts away from the soul that once made it magical. And the more it drifts, the more fragile it becomes. Because a city can survive without luxury. A city can survive without billionaires. But no city can survive without its people. As Vegas tries to reinvent itself as a playground for the wealthy, a dangerous divide grows between the image the city sells and the reality people live in. On the screens, the Strip glows in gold, fountains dance in slow motion, and drone footage shows a city pulsing with life. But on the ground, the energy is fading. The city that once fed on laughter, chaos, and spontaneity now feels curated, controlled, and increasingly hollow. The crowds that made Vegas electric are shrinking. Families that once planned annual vacations no longer see the value. Middle-class travelers, once the backbone of the Strip, describe the new Vegas as cold, overpriced, and inaccessible. Visitors say the same thing again and again. I didn't feel welcome. And ironically, that feeling is shaping the next chapter of Vegas more than any billion-dollar investment. Inside the casinos, executives defend their strategy as modernization. But even they can't hide the fact that the shift is destabilizing the city's core. Conventions, the most reliable weekday traffic, are trending downward. Organizers complain about rising costs, unpredictable closures, and the feeling that basic hospitality has deteriorated. Several major conventions quietly moved to Phoenix, Dallas, and Orlando, not because Vegas lacks space, but because Vegas is pricing itself out of its own marketplace. Meanwhile, nightlife venues that once thrived on long lines and shoulder-to-shoulder crowds now rely on deep discounts, influencer promotions, and prepaid bottle service to stay afloat. The spontaneity, the drop-in fun that defined Vegas, is evaporating. Everything is pre-booked, pre-priced, labeled premium, or blocked behind a reservation system. When entertainment becomes transactional, it loses the magic that made it legendary. Small businesses off the Strip are hit even harder. For decades, they lived off the overflow. The tourists who wanted to explore, wander, and experience the real Vegas. But with the rise of mega events and barricaded streets, many visitors feel trapped inside their hotel bubble. Local shops report foot traffic dropping by double-digit percentages during major events. Restaurants that survived 2 economic crashes now struggle against a third wave, one created not by recession, but by exclusivity. This growing imbalance affects more than the economy. It erodes the spirit of the city. Locals describe a new kind of fatigue, not the exhaustion of hard work, but the exhaustion of being pushed out. A city worker said it best. Vegas is still bright, but it doesn't feel alive. And while companies celebrate high-spending guests, they ignore a warning that economists have repeated for years. A city built only for the rich becomes unstable. High rollers come and go, but regular visitors, the millions who fill the hotels, restaurants, and shows year-round, were the foundation. They didn't need VIP lounges, private jets, or curated experiences. They needed fairness, excitement, and the feeling that Vegas belonged to them too. When that feeling disappears, loyalty disappears with it. Many longtime visitors express a strange sadness. They say Vegas feels less like a place to escape your life, and more like a place that wants to escape you. The warmth is gone, replaced by velvet ropes and premium-only access. The casinos are bigger, but the heart feels smaller. The lights are brighter, but the atmosphere feels dim. Even long-term residents admit they hardly recognize the city anymore. The casinos that once treated them like family now treat them as expendable. The neighborhoods that once felt stable are shifting as people move out. The sense of community that survived recession, foreclosures, and crises is weakening under the weight of inflated rents and corporate restructuring. But the deepest problem isn't the economy, it's trust. Trust that the city stands for more than profit. Trust that jobs will last. Trust that residents matter. Trust that visitors are valued. And once trust disappears, it takes years to rebuild. Vegas is facing a choice. Continue down the path of exclusivity, automation, and premium-only experiences, or remember what made it powerful in the first place. Accessibility, excitement, unpredictability, and human connection. Because the truth is simple, luxury alone cannot keep a city alive. A city needs people, ordinary people, working people, dreaming people, to survive. And right now, those people are slipping away.